about his daily life in his hometown. He says he's thinking about recording something new in the future.
其实我那个回来之前就有规划。
My mom's recently been diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm planning to take her to travel around the country and make some vlogs to record our journey. Apart from that, I'm also thinking about making videos to record the lives of the elders in my village.
他们一生的写照。
Despite being away from the mundane office routine, these young video creators are still faced with challenges. The survey conducted by a vlogger on Bilibili shows more than one-third of the vloggers are unable to make ends meet by posting videos online. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Tian Yu.
U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland says the Justice Department's asking a federal court to unseal the warrant the FBI used to search the Mar-a-Lago estate of former President Donald Trump. A motion filed in a federal court in Florida says the public's clear and powerful interest in understanding what occurred under these circumstances weighs heavily in favor of unsealing. And should the warrant be released, it could disclose unflattering information about the former president and about FBI scrutiny of his handling of sensitive government documents. The department officially requested the unsealing of the warrant, as well as a property receipt listing the seized items and 2 unspecified attachments. We're at 28 minutes past the hour. Beijing's cloudy overnight, 25 degrees. It'll be sunny and 32 on Saturday. Chongqing will be clear with the temperature dropping to 32 this evening. Then sunshine and 42 tomorrow. Last is at 12 overnight. Saturday's partly cloudy and 25. Hong Kong's down to 25 degrees. And then tomorrow some clouds and 31. Elsewhere, Tokyo's 25 overnight. It'll see a light rainfall and 28 on Saturday. Islamabad will dip to 25. Then sunshine, a light rain later on and 35 for a high. Bangkok's 24 overnight. Tomorrow, a light rainfall and 33 degrees. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, the UN Security Council has held an emergency meeting at Russia's request on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine. The city of Quanzhou in southeastern China is serving as a magnet for foreign business in the country. The U.S. Justice Department is asking a federal judge to unseal the warrant the FBI used to search the Florida home of former President Donald Trump. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Experience the musical classics of the East. Mingle with the masters of Chinese music.
我的这种美，召唤了女性。
因为蒙古民族被称为马背民族，少子二胡。
Music talks. Witness the sound of antiquity and modernity.
We all enter this world with a universal greeting. We then learn to speak.
Bonjour, comment allez-vous?
Though our languages, cultures, and traditions may differ, we still share one thing in common. We have hope for humanity and the world.
German Railway Company Deutsche.
Director of the
The
International
26th
Monetary
United
Fund,
Nations
Krista
Climate.
Lea.
Hear the difference with CGTN Radio. Join a global network to connect with the world.
CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.
I love you. 我爱你. This might be the easiest way to say I love you, since there are so many other romantic expressions. No matter if you're a rookie
你好，我的中文已平安健。
or a sophisticated learner. 我来北京5年了，我是本地人. There is definitely something that will interest you. Check out Takeaway Chinese, a word that starts with 你好.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour. 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Shane Bigham with you on this Friday. Still to come in business, China's central bank says the country expects to reach its inflation target this year. In sports, a Chinese teenager reaches her first WTA 1000 quarterfinal. In culture and entertainment, the works of a famous Czech artist are on display in Beijing. To contact us, you can email beijinghour@cri.com.cn. Now checking the day's headlines. Chinese authorities have said the country will work with overseas regulators to better protect the legitimate interests of companies and investors. China's Securities Regulatory Commission made the statement in response to a move by Chinese firms to begin delisting from the U.S. market. The commission said these companies have listed in several locations, and their pullout from the U.S. will not affect their financing from domestic and overseas capital markets. Chinese authorities say the U.S. deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System in South Korea harms China's strategic security. The Chinese Foreign Ministry is urging all stakeholders to handle the issue properly so that it will not affect ties between China and South Korea. Reports say the South Korean government's accelerating efforts to normalize the operation of the U.S. base in the southern city of Seongju that deployed the THAAD system. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has reiterated the UN commitment to a denuclearized Korean peninsula. The UN chief made the remarks during his meeting with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol in Seoul. The top UN official also held a separate meeting with South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin. Cambodia has called for greater participation from all stakeholders to conserve endangered Asian elephants in the country. The appeal was made on World Elephant Day. Asian elephants are listed as endangered on the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List. Cambodia is home to between 400 and 600 wild Asian elephants. Officials say Cambodia needs about $40.5 million over 10 years to protect Asian elephants across the kingdom. A number of Western countries have agreed to continue long-term funding to help Ukraine's military fight against Russia. These countries reached the agreement Thursday at a conference in the Danish capital. Danish Defense Minister Morten Bodskov says the money will be spent in enhancing armaments production.
In total, participants today have committed more than 1.5 billion euros to the table for Ukraine. The United Kingdom is setting up a fund in order to gather financing for increased productions of weapons. But money alone will not do the trick, as you say. We need increased productions.
Denmark, Britain, and Ukraine co-hosted the conference. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland says the Justice Department's asking a federal court to unseal the warrant the FBI used to search the Mar-a-Lago estate of former President Donald Trump. A motion filed in federal court in Florida says the public's clear and powerful interest in understanding what occurred under these circumstances weighs heavily in favor of unsealing. Garland acknowledged extraordinary public interest in the case about the classified records.
The department filed the motion to make public the warrant and receipt in light of the former president's public confirmation of the search, the surrounding circumstances, and the substantial public interest in this matter.
Should the warrant be released, it could disclose unflattering information about the former president and about FBI scrutiny of his handling of sensitive government documents. The department specifically requested the unsealing of the warrant as well as a property receipt listing the seized items and 2 unspecified attachments. Border officials in Panama have intercepted a semi-submersible vessel and found more than 620 kilograms of cocaine on board. Agents of the National Border Service made the discovery as the boat traveled near the country's border with Colombia. Border Service General Director Oriol Ortega says the vessel was almost entirely underwater, making it difficult to detect.
This is the first time that law enforcement in the Caribbean area of Gunayala has successfully seized a vehicle such as this aquatic one that we refer to as a low-profile boat because of its very nature. You can see how the boat is barely a foot above sea level.
3 Colombians were arrested. The Colombian government's announced its intention to resume peace talks with the National Liberation Army. They'll resume talks after a suspension of more than 4 years. Foreign Minister Alvaro Leiva headed a delegation in Havana to initiate contact with ELN representatives.
We aspire to resume dialogues with the National Liberation Army, ELN, in this land of peace, in order to begin with the path proposed by President Gustavo Petro to reach total peace.
The latest peace talks with the ELN began in 2017 and took place in Quito and then Havana. The Colombian government suspended the talks in early 2018 following an attack by the guerrilla group on police officers. Severe heat waves and drought are intensifying in Portugal. Around 45% of the mainland is classified as being in extreme drought. At Almora Castle, the river is so low that tourists can almost cross it by foot. Susanna Costa is one of them.
We can see the river is much lower and things are much drier around it. On the way here, we also notice things much more burned. Few green areas. We see small bushes, not big trees anymore.
To prevent the problems from getting worse, authorities have cordoned off the area. Visits need to be done by boat through the main entrance. This is Shane Bigham live from the Chinese capital. Coming up in business, China's central bank says the country expects to reach its inflation target for this year.
You're listening to the Beijing Hour. 60 minutes of comprehensive news. Your window on China and the world.
37 past the hour now. In business, stock markets on the Chinese mainland finished lower today. Wang Yin has more.
Mainland markets slipped in today's session as uncertainty over the Federal Reserve's monetary tightening trajectory dented sentiment in regional markets. The Shanghai Composite Index closed down 0.15%. The Shenzhen Component Index fell 0.44%, while the small cap Chinex lost more than 1% to lead the losses. Most sectors remained tepid, with shares in the semiconductor, photovoltaic, lithium battery sector, and automobile sectors all underperforming. Nora Technology, Unigroup, Guoxin Microelectronics, and Tianqi Lithium all lost around 2%. Bucking the trend, shares in the coal mining and oil and gas sectors advanced, with Yankuang Energy hitting a new high, ending the day 3.4% up, and stocks in sea freight, aviation, online games, electricity, and liquor sectors also outperformed. And in focus today, China's third biggest IPO of the year doubled in value on its trading debut. Haigang Information Technology jumped as much as 105% on the first day of Shanghai trade today. It is the largest initial public offering on Shanghai's tech-focused stock market so far this year. The maker and distributor of processors raised 10.8 billion yuan after selling 300 million shares at 36 yuan each. According to a statement from the company, proceeds from the IPO will mostly go towards research and development. Haigang closed the first trading day about 67% up.
That was market analyst Wang Yin. The Hong Kong stock market closed higher. The Hang Seng Index was up more than 0.4%. In Japan, the Nikkei gained over 2.6%. China's central bank says the country is expected to achieve its inflation control target this year amid several favorable conditions to keep prices generally stable. The People's Bank of China says the conditions include the country's stable monetary policy, efficient operation of industrial and supply chains, high food self-sufficiency rate, and low linkage of domestic coal and clean energy prices with global markets. Liu Zhiqin's a senior fellow at the Chengyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University, and he says there are other favorable priorities apart from those conditions.
For instance, we have a unified domestic market. This is very important, the precondition to stimulate all these other conditions. For instance, all these three conditions: the first is stable monetary policy, the second, the industrial production, stable and high efficient, and also sufficient supply chain. All these three conditions will be closely connected with the unified domestic market. This is a very important thing. So we should have enough confidence that to support all the state policy, and also we hope that in the time to come, in the rest of this year, that we will further develop our economy and have a better solution to solve the high inflation threat. As we know that we have already very moderate and very good satisfied the CPI, the so-called inflation, 2.7%. So we should be happy that to deal with all new challenges.
The bank expects that this year's price increases will remain within a reasonable range and achieve the target of an average annual consumer price index increase of around 3%. But it also warns that the CPI growth may top 3% in a few months amid structural inflation pressure. Liu Zhiqin says a 3% CPI growth may put slight pressure on the domestic market, but it's still not worrisome.
Also, if our CPI come to 3%, this is the highest level of our government target. I think we'll have a slight pressure on the domestic market price, especially for those basic necessities like food price and vegetable and pork, and some seasonable prices could be happening to have a different position. But in principle, as I know that all this problem will be solved, especially this challenges will be dealt with good conditions and policies. I don't think that our inflation will really come to 3% of the as target. I think that the best result could be 2.9% at the end of this year.
The central bank has reiterated that it'll adhere to a prudent approach in its monetary policy and avoid a flood-like stimulus. Will says the policy plays a key role in stabilizing the economy.
I think all these policies come out with one thing, that is the confidence. The entrepreneur and our bankers, financial institutions are really very confident to keep our economic in a stabilizing way. So prudent policy, stable policy measures, and consistent practice, all these 3 points will be combined together to create a cost-saving, high-efficiency development role or development model. So this is the very important factor that we don't need, really like some Western countries, to have a flat-like or easing monetary policy or have a higher interest rate. So this is not the way that the is to follow. We have our very good and efficient policy to support our economic